Good afternoon, guys. It's Nick Koumalatsos. This video is going to be a little different, something I've been really wanting to share and can use your help on. This is about the MARSOC raiders in Afghanistan back in 2007. It was our first deployment as MARSOC, but was not our first deployment. Now, to give you a little bit of background, in March of 2007, these raiders were on patrol and were hit by an IED in a complex ambush. In layman's terms, they were attacked by the enemy. What's really bad about this complex attack and what was happening in Afghanistan, and I actually experienced it myself in 2009, they would ambush a unit on patrol. The unit would return fire, they would finish the engagement, and then they would do a BDA, and then they would leave the area. Well, the problem is, when they left the area, the enemy was taking the shell casings, the weapons, and the dead bodies and moving them. One incident that happened, and that actually Vice President Cheney at the time mentioned, which is what happened to us, was the Taliban were actually in another village throwing grenades inside of houses with civilians, taking those bodies and then taking those bodies on site to the governor and saying, look what the Americans are doing. That was the war that we were fighting, and that's the enemy that we were fighting. So this was a common TTP that the enemy was using, and they used it against those Marines. You have to look at this from a non-Western mindset. We weren't fighting a conventional army. This is an unconventional enemy in an unconventional world. They don't follow the same rules that we do. They're terrorists. Fox Company did what they were supposed to do, and the enemy used it against them. Since we've learned that lesson, we've gotten a lot smarter on the way we protect ourselves from those things. But the fact that that same exact thing happened to me personally, both in Iraq and Afghanistan, the difference is my command had our back and understood what the enemy's TTPs were. The commander at the time was General John Nichols, then Colonel Nichols. He was an Army commander, and he was in charge of all the soft units in Afghanistan. Now, he made a knee-jerk reaction to the public, basically admitting fault that these Marines did something wrong, that they killed civilians, that they weren't actually ambushed, that they didn't act appropriately. Shortly after that, Marine Times published this headline that I'm sure everybody remembers of the melting spade. I was at 2nd Force 2004 and 2005. The Marine Corps needed sergeants to go to 3rd Recon, so I was taken from my 2nd Force platoon and I was sent to 3rd Recon. The guys that were stayed in those platoons became Fox Company at 2nd Raider Battalion. I went through Recon Indoctrination Platoon with a lot of those guys. I went to ARS with a lot of those guys. They were very senior. They had lots of experience. And here I am in Iraq with 3rd Recon Battalion, and I see this article and we start hearing news of these guys being ambushed and being thrown out of Afghanistan. These were my friends. These were the guys that I came up in the community with. They were seasoned reconnaissance Marines and seasoned raiders. Most of them all had combat deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan. And here I am reading in this article that they were young, undertrained, and no experience. It's completely inaccurate. And that they acted inappropriately. None of this was the case. The investigation started, NCIS was involved, and all of a sudden, and all of these guys' lives are turned upside down. In 2007, I come back from Okinawa, and I'm at 2nd Raider Battalion, which was 2nd Force, where these guys were, and I actually checked into Fox Company. As I check into the unit, I see all of their Humvees in the back of the unit, filled with bullet holes. My first thought was, that's strange. If these guys allegedly did what they did, why are their Humvees shot to shit? Now, me knowing better, I already knew the truth. To me, that was plain as day. Like, the evidence was there. This whole thing was a tragedy, and people's lives were ruined over this. Guys got out that did not want to get out. The commanding officer of the company at the time, Major Fred Galvin, almost has 30 years in the Marine Corps, has a master's degree, and for the past 10 years can't really get a job. That is a tragedy. The guys that have issues with this aren't really traumatized from combat or their job or what they did over there. They're traumatized by what American citizens and leaders did to them over the past 10 years during that investigation. Now, to me, this really struck a chord because while I was not there, these are guys that I came up with the community. I trusted. I have their back. To this day, I have their back. I believe them. I know them. And this very well could have been me if circumstances were different. The investigation was completed in March of 2008, so 1 year after the incident. This is verbatim right here. I have a copy of the report. The report specifically found that MSOC-F convoy was in fact the subject of a complex ambush consisting of a suicide vehicle-borne improvised explosive device, an SVBID, and small arms fire, that the Marines acted in accordance with the applicable operation order, the rules of engagement, and the law of armed conflict, and the Marines' action reflected sound military judgment. 2008. It is 2018. This report was swept under the rug, not talked about, so they were publicly defamed, they were publicly humiliated, and for 10 years, Congress refused to admit that they were wrong, that the military was wrong, and that they were in the right, and they did what they were supposed to do, protect their lives and protect the ones around them. Which brings us to today. Yesterday, Nick Kaufman released an article on SOFREP, which got my attention. He actually tagged me in a tweet, and I was blown away. It was awesome to see that we have been made progress, and all of it was Major Fred Galvin, who never quit over a decade of putting his life on the line for his Marines. He never stopped fighting to get his Marines exonerated so they can move past this and remove this stigma. The problem was they were quick to judge, and as you guys know, negativity on the internet will blow up, but once something happens and they say, oh, my bad, we were wrong, that does not get spread, and nobody wants to talk about it. So our Congressman Walter Jones right here in Onslow County has been fighting along with Fred Galvin in exonerating these Marines. I'm going to read you a letter from Major General Padilla from Headquarters Marine Corps. Dear Representative Jones, this is in response to your letter of December 4th, 2017. In which you expressed concern regarding Marines assigned to MARSOC'S Fox Company during a 2007 deployment to Afghanistan. The Commandant of the Marine Corps has reviewed this matter, and I am responding on his behalf. We appreciate your continued advocacy on the behalf of Marines and have reviewed the materials you provided. We are concerned to hear of the challenges many members of Fox Company are facing, which are unfortunately far too common among our combat veterans. I have asked the commanding officer of our Wounded Warrior Regiment to follow up with these Marines to ensure they are receiving appropriate and all necessary care and support. As you mentioned in your letter, Court of Inquiry determined the Marines acted in accordance with the applicable operations order, the rules of engagement, and the law of armed conflict, and that the Marines' actions on that day reflected sound military judgment. In terms of exoneration, on May 23, 2008, the Commander, Marine Corps Forces Central Command publicly released a statement clearly concluding that during March 4, 2007 incident, the Fox Company Marines acted appropriately in accordance with the rules of engagement and tactics, techniques, procedures in place at the time in response of a complex attack. The release indicated that no Fox Company Marines faced judicial or adverse administrative actions for the March 4, 2007 incident, nor is there any adverse information in their military records associated with that incident. Unless there is a new and relevant information that was not known at this time, I fear there is nothing to be gained by revisiting the events of March 4th, 2007 in order to restate the conclusions of the Court of Inquiry a decade later. So still the Marine Corps does not want to put this out there stating that these Marines were exonerated. So we're going to do it. So I'd like to call the author of the article, Nick Kaufman, and get his thoughts.
Hey, Nick.
Hey, what's going on? So I just read the letter that Major General Padilla basically said that he didn't want to revisit the events. So I wanted to get your your verbal opinion and thoughts on the matter of and what we need to do to move forward.
Sure. So, first things, if I'm being completely honest, I appreciate that the Office of the Commandant finally acknowledged the issue, but I don't think that they have done all that they can. It's the way I look at it. This is a good battle that we've won, but the war is still ongoing because they kind of danced around some of the details. I think they could have clearly stated these Marines did not murder innocent civilians because that's the biggest stigma that's still following them around.
Right.
Not so much on SOFREP, but when I go to the Washington Post today, I still see comments about people after the article talks about how they were innocent and they didn't do anything wrong. People in the comment section are still saying they killed innocent women and children. They should be in jail. And there's clearly going to be an education process, but I think that the Marine Corps, as an organization that prides itself on looking out for its own, needs to do a better job.
Yeah, and I'm curious, why is it so easy to melt the spade and then say that they acted inappropriate, but when it comes down to saying, oh, we were wrong, they actually used sound military judgment according with the rules of engagement, that they can't go on a public stand and say that anywhere.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you know better than I do. The Marine Corps is a very proud organization, and I think in the last decade, 11 years actually, but I think that there have been a lot of bruised egos along the way, and a lot of those egos are in high positions within the DoD and the Marine Corps specifically, and they haven't forgotten how bad they've looked to their peers along the way. They've maintained their image as far as the public's concerned, but the people that are really in the know, that understand what really happened, I think that that's what they care about most is, kind of sticking to their guns and not giving any quarter to these guys that they basically ruin their lives. I mean, it's not to say that there's not a point where they could fix things and help these guys get back on their feet, but they've done a lot of damage. And one of the next steps, I mean, the Congressman Jones, he's been fighting for, it's been 10 years, I think, since his actual involvement. And he is going to keep fighting. He's not done. And his next step is to write the commandant and ask him to hold a public ceremony to pin the Raider insignia on these guys, which I think would be, yes, it's ceremonial, but it would have a lot of importance because these guys paved the way. I mean, you think about when the Green Berets are set up, or the SEALs, or you name any special operations unit, how revered that original group is.
Right.
And these guys are still black sheep. So I think that it would be great for these men on a personal level to receive that, and then it would be good for the Marine Corps' image to make amends to an extent by giving these guys the insignia that they deserve.
Absolutely. I mean, I've got friends that were with Fox Company. I think I told you earlier that I was part of that unit before it rolled over, and then when I came back, I was with that unit, and I was actually checked back into Fox Company. These guys I went through school with. I mean, they were my friends, and they still are to this day. And I've seen how it's changed them over the past 11 years. And I think that is, I mean, the minimum they can do is hold a public ceremony and pin the device on them. To let this nation know who they are and what they did.
Yeah, these guys aren't going after money. They're not going after anything. That they're not in it for themselves outside of just having their reputation restored as much as possible. And I don't think it's unreasonable to ask that. It wouldn't require the Marine Corps to say a word either. I mean, announce that you're having a ceremony, let these guys march up there, pin the insignia on them. And you don't have to admit anything you don't want to talk about or rehash anything. It's not that hard. So I'm hoping that they'll do the right thing. And if I've learned anything from watching Congressman Jones over the years, it's that he's not going to give up. And I know that the resolution that he introduced in the House, it's H.Res.21. Mm-hmm. It's up for a vote very soon. It's getting some bipartisan support, and it's going to be read, if approved, it's going to be read in the congressional record that these Marines were innocent and that they, again, like the statement you just covered, they showed sound military judgment. So that's another important step. And I think with Congressman Jones leading the charge and Fred supporting him along the way, Fred Galvin, that we're going to see a positive result in the end. I just hope it's not going to take another 10 years.
Yeah, I hope so as well. What can the public do? I mean, what can we do and get the information to the public between SoftRep and then my channel to help?
That's a great question. So, the readers that are familiar with the story, they can definitely start by reaching out to their state representatives and asking that they support H.Res.21. And you can also, I'm not asking anyone to start arguments or anything like that in the comment sections, but just helping to spread the word and educate people, because there are a lot of people on the internet, it's no surprise, they see a headline and that's all they go off of. They don't actually read the article. So when you see someone making the statement that these guys murdered women and children, just politely encourage them to read the articles, whether it's through SoftRep or the Marine Corps Times or anywhere for that matter. I think that if you're able to help educate people and the word keeps spreading, that this misinformation is going to go away one day, and just put some pressure on your state representatives to support this resolution.
Excellent. And I'm going to put those links in the comments below all of this as well to your articles as well.
Awesome. Well, you're a lot closer to the situation than I am because you were part of that group, obviously. But I appreciate your community supporting me as an outsider, as I've been helping to get the truth out there, and I'm glad you're doing what you're doing now too.
Yeah, I'm sure we appreciate you putting the right information out there and working with Fred as well. So thank you very much, man.
Yep, same to you. Thank
Okay,
you.
all right, we'll be in touch.
All right.
So that's that, guys. These guys were exonerated back in 2008, and here it is in 2018. We're still fighting for a public exoneration from Congress as well as from the Commandant of the Marine Corps. Please reach out to your representatives, support that bill, find out if they're supporting it, and educate yourself. I still see the comments that these guys did whatever that people say, but it's not true, and we have the documentation, and I personally know what happened. I don't really ask much for you guys, but this time I am going to ask. Please share this video, share these links, go do the research yourself. I linked all the stuff below. Share it, tell a friend. These guys fought for our country. They did what they were supposed to do, and we just didn't have their back. Let's make this right. As always, I thank you so much. Never quit, never surrender, always forward. See you guys next time.